It was a large room full of people, all kinds. And they had all arrived at the same building at more or less the same time. And they were all free. They were all asking themselves the same question. What is behind that curtain? You were born, and so you're free. So happy birthday.
There's a story in an ancient play about birds called The Birds. And it's a short story from before the world began. A time when there was no earth and no land, only air and birds everywhere. But the thing was, there was no place to land because there was no land. The birds just circled around and around because this is before the world began. And the sound was deafening. Songbirds everywhere. Billions and billions and billions of birds. And one of these birds was a lark. And one day, her father died. And this was a really big problem because what should they do with the body? Since there was no land, there was no place to put the body. Finally, the lark had a solution. She decided to bury her father in the back of her own mind. And this was the beginning of memory, because before this, no one could remember a thing. Birds just kept flying in huge circles.
It's that flood where you are right now. Only much better.
I saw this guy on the train, and he seemed to have gotten stuck in one of those abstract trances. And he was going,
And Frank said, I think he's in some kind of pain. I think it's a pain cry. And I said, pain cry? Then language is a virus.
Language is a virus. Ha ha ha. Language is a virus. Ha ha ha. Language is a virus.
Language is a virus.
I had this dream, and in it, my mother was sitting there, cutting out pictures of hamsters. In some of the pictures, the hamsters are pets. And in some of them, the hamsters are just somewhere in the background. See, she has these piles of cedar chips, you know, the kind that are on the bottom of hamster cages. Well, she has this pile of cedar chips, and she's gluing them into frames for pictures. So she's got this pile of cedar chips and gluing them into frames for pictures. And she's just hanging over the fireplace. And this is more or less her method of telling me that, I should become a structuralist filmmaker. I had wanted to do before.
Last year, I was on a twin-engine jet plane coming from Milwaukee to New York City. Just over LaGuardia, one of the twin engines conked out and we started flipping over and over. Then, the other engine died and we went completely out of control. New York City started getting taller and taller. A voice came over the intercom and said,
"Your captain has informed us that we are going to attempt a crash landing. Please extinguish all cigarettes and put your tray tables in the upright position." Your captain says, "Put your hands on your knees." Your captain says, "Put your hands on your head." Your captain says, "Put your hands like this." Now it turns out that we were caught in a downdraft and we rammed into a bank. It was in short a miracle, but to this day, I still have problems riding on airplanes. I would walk down that aisle, my eyes would clam shut, and I would fall into a deep, impenetrable sleep. Now I was finally able to get over this fear, but I'd still have to go to the stewardess cabin and say, "Hey, can I sit with you?" And they would say, "Yeah, what a baby." And we made nervous chit-chat, and I watched their uniforms crack.
Sometimes, even this didn't work, and I'd have to find one of the other passengers to talk to. You can spot these people immediately. There's one on every flight. Someone who's really on your wavelength.
Hi there.
And I decided, this is the one I want to sit next to. So I sat down and we started talking, and suddenly I realized that he was talking an entirely different language. Computerese, a kind of high-tech lingo. We talked mostly about his girlfriend. This girl was never in a bad mood. She was in a bad mood. Moody kind of guy. Apparently, the romance was kind of rocky. He just kept saying,
You know, it's like so digital.
he just meant that the relationship was on again, off again. Always two things switching. Current runs through the bodies, and then it doesn't. It was the language of noises, of signals, of sounds, of switching. It was the language of the rabbit, the caribou, the penguin, the beaver. It was always two things switching.
This was the language of the future. Jump out of the plane. There is no pilot. You are not alone. It's the language of the future, and it is digital.
June 1st, 1937, the American pilot Amelia Earhart began a flight around the world. Her plan was to fly counterclockwise 1,000 miles a day and become the first woman to circumnavigate the Earth. Earhart flew a small Lockheed Electra, accompanied by her navigator, Fred Noonan. They flew non-stop, with only short breaks for fuel and sleep. In early July, almost at the end of her trip, as she attempted a landing on a small island in the mid-Pacific, she began broadcasting on the wrong radio frequency and lost contact with the Coast Guard cutter assigned to guide her in. They could hear her, but she couldn't hear them. An hour later, she disappeared, and her plane
was never found. At every stop, Era handed out her pilot log, which is published daily in newspapers around the world. Little blurbs and comments and observations about her plane, the weather, her location, stories about her past, and why she flew. She also wrote a lot about the sound of the motor, the maddening, constant sound of the motor, the drone that drowned out every other sound.
It's the takeoff and landing that the hardest part of each flight. There was a time, the year was 1932. I was headed for London, but by some miscalculation and some errant wings, I ended up in Londonderry, Ireland instead, in a cow pasture. Well, I flew my plane into the farmer's backyard, and not knowing the proper phrase for the occasion, I simply said, "Hello, I'm from America." And the farmer said,
Well, that may be, but right now you are illegally parked in my cow pasture.
It was up in the mountain. Had a ceremony every year. We had it, and everyone from miles around came in for it. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and the kids. Grandfathers, grandmothers, everyone. And we had it around this big natural pool. And there was lots of trees, pine trees and palm trees. All the trees were there. And we had these big urns, well, you know the kind. And we danced and sang, and it lasted for 3 days. And everyone cooked, looked forward to it all year. Well, one year, I remember we were in the middle of it. I was just a boy at the time. But anyway, it was evening. And suddenly, a whole bunch of tigers suddenly came in and started destroying everything. I don't know where they came from, but they knocked over all the urns, and it was really a big mess. So, and we spent the whole next year rebuilding everything. But then the next year, they just came back and destroyed it all over again. This became a pattern, went on for 4 or 5 years. We were getting used to it. One year, we decided to have a meeting. We decided that we would include the tigers, make them part of the ceremony, you know, expect them. So we decided to start putting food in the urns for the tigers, so they'd have something to eat. Just small things at first, crackers and whatnot. But later, that's so we were saving our food all year for the tigers. Then, one year, tigers didn't come. They never came back. Well, I was talking to my friend, and I said, I wanted you, and I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you. I couldn't find you. And he said, hey, are you talking to me? Or are you just practicing for one of those performances of yours? Huh?
Language is virus. Language is virus. Ha 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 ha.
Language is a virus.
And it started out with a bad day. And I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself when the phone rang. And it said,
Hey, this is Emma, and we'd like you to be the first artist in residence here.
and I said, "You're not from NASA." And I hung up the phone. 5 minutes later, the same person called, and I said, "Come on." And I was sure it was a fan who had figured out that my secret dream was to become an artist in residence at NASA. And had decided to torture me. Anyway, finally, I decided to call NASA, and they said that yes, I actually had been chosen to be the first artist in residence there. And I said, well, what does an artist in residence actually do? I mean, what does that mean with the space program? And they said,
Well, we don't really know what it means. What do you think it means?
and I thought, who are these people? Anyway, I took the job, and for the next 2 years, I worked as a government agent at NASA. And I got to visit all sorts of places, like Hubble and Ames, the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, and Mission Control in Houston. And I was so proud. I mean, you almost never get to be the first of anything. And I took it really seriously, like trying to figure out ways for artists and scientists to do things together.
Don't forget your mittens. Hey, pal. Do you know how I can get down from here?
Yes, just, take a right where, they're going to build, the new, freeway, and then, just take a left, they're going to build, a new sports, center, and then just go straight where they're going to build, a new mall, I think, and then, just stop, I think they're going, I think it's a bank.
Thanks for the ride. Ooh, coo, coo.
Golden cities, golden towns. Golden cities, golden towns.
And long cars and long lines and great big signs, and they all say,
Hallelujah, you're the lady who every man for himself.
coo, coo, coo. Well, you know what I think? I think we should put some mountains over there. Otherwise, what are all the characters supposed to fall off of? And one of those stairs. You're a lady who, coo, coo. Here's a man that lives a life of danger. And everywhere he goes, he stays a stranger.
Howdy, stranger. Mind if I chew gum? Every man for himself. 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 Every man. All in favor, say aye.
Big science, hallelujah.
line is between actual communication and just repetitive babble. For instance, this parrot can do the perfect imitation of my brother on the phone.
This is Chris. Yeah, Thursday be alright. Alright then. See you then. Bye.
And then he will do the perfect imitation of the phone's disconnect sound. Now, I'm not really sure what this bird is actually doing. A couple weekends ago, my brother went out of town and left Uncle Bob with a few of his friends and with a tape deck and a condenser microphone attached to his cage to see if he would add any new words to his vocabulary while he was gone. But this didn't work because every time the microphone was turned on, Uncle Bob would just not say a single word. But then the second it was turned off, he would start muttering quietly to himself. So my brother's friend decided to hide around the corner to see what he was saying. And what this bird was saying was actually pretty extraordinary.
I guess I'm a parrot. I guess I'm a bird.
Over and over again, as if it was slowly dawning on him that he was a parrot as opposed to, a towel or a dinner plate or an old hollow tree.
It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive in the wrong direction on the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive in the right direction in reverse on the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive herds of hooven animals on the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive vehicles with metal tires on the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive in the wrong direction on the entrance and exit ramps of the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive in the right direction in reverse on the entrance and exit ramps of the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive in the wrong direction on the entrance and exit ramps of the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive herds of hooven animals on the entrance and exit ramps of the New Jersey Turnpike. It is against the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority to drive vehicles with metal tires on the entrance and exit ramps of the New Jersey Turnpike.
There was this old couple who decided to drive cross country, and they were both almost legally deaf. About 10 miles away from home, the burglar alarm in their car went off and got stuck in the on position. They drove all the way to San Francisco like this. The noise didn't seem to bother the old lady. Near Chicago, she said.
It sounds like faraway bees on a summer day.
Her husband said.
What?
You can read the signs. You've been on this road before. Do you want to go home? Do you want to go home now?
One of the major airlines used to run this kind of lottery, mostly to give passengers something to do while they waited in line on the runway. The stewardess would hand out the lottery tickets, and you peeled away the sticker. If you had the right combination of numbers, you won a free trip to Hawaii. If you didn't have the right combination, you didn't win a free trip. The airline discontinued this when there were too many complaints about the timing of the lottery. They said, "Our passengers tell us that they feel that waiting on the runway is the wrong time to play a game of chance."
I had a dream, and in my dream, I was your customer, and the customer is always right. You're driving down the road, and you're talking to yourself, and you're saying, why these mountains? Why this road? This big town? This ugly train? How come people from the north are so charismatic, industrious, and let's face it, preppy? And people from the south are so devil may care, every man for himself.
I know this English guy who was driving around in the South, and he stopped for breakfast one morning somewhere in southeast Georgia. He saw grits on the menu. He'd never heard of grits before, so he asked the waitress,
What are grits anyway?
She said,
"Grits are 50.
He said,
Yes, but what are they?
She said,
They're extra."
He said,
Yes, I'll have the grits, please.
I remember when the president said we were gonna go to outer space and look for things in outer space. And I remember the way the astronauts talked and everybody was watching, because there was a chance that they would burn up on the launching pad or take off from Cape Canaveral and land in Fort Lauderdale 5 minutes later by mistake. But now, we're not even trying to get that far. Now, it's more like the bus. Now, it's more like we go up just high enough to get a good view, and we aim the cameras back down. We don't aim the cameras up. We take the pictures and come right back down and develop them. That's what it's like now. Now, that's what it's like.
Every time I hear a fire truck, it seems like it's running away from the fire. Not towards it, not right into it. They seem like huge, stampeding monsters running away from the fire. Not towards it, not right into it.
over the river and through the woods. Let me see that map. A sideshow, a smokescreen, a passing landscape, a city that repeats itself endlessly, hoping something will stick in its mind.
Cross equator, brilliant sound, sea is dark, horizon tilts, dropping down, through the shining valleys of clouds, dropping down, into the light, the red, then gold, then black again, dropping down, into the light, sky, red, gold. June 8th, Dakar. Very hot air can make for the worst flying conditions. Motor stalls, cuts out, the cockpit boiling, everywhere so hot. I am hungry, I am hot. Black eagles, sea is dark. A mist, sun, waves of heat, a camp, another camp, waves of sand, a caravan. Khartoum, June 9th. I carry a letter to whom it may concern. just in case the engine fails and we drop into the Arabian desert. I carry a letter I myself cannot read. It is addressed to the Arab tribesmen and explains why an American pilot would fall onto their land and what to do if she did. Have maps, have water, bring walking shoes. I've always wanted to fly. Nights in LA, we'd drive out to the airfield, watch the military and stunt pilots spinning, wheeling around crazy loop-de-loops. And you could see them, the city lights were so bright, their shadows against the sky. Below, 2 pagodas, tiny islands, mud volcanoes, a village on stilts, and a fringe of docks. Land at the Dum-Dum Airport. The streets are wide. White bulls are walking everywhere, from Karachi to Calcutta. Black eagles at 5,000 feet. Hills roll like carpets down to the water's edge. Southerly winds, a mist, a monsoon, then a sudden sandstorm, far below factories. June 18th, gray skies, past the many mouths of the Ganges and the Brahmaputra rivers. Tiny figures trailing in the water look up as we pass. Some wave their hats. Hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. Shipped the parachutes home today. Had to take on more fuel. So, we shipped the parachutes home today. Shouldn't need them over the open ocean. No, we shouldn't need them.
And he said, I had to write that letter to your mother. And I had to tell the judge that it was you. And I had to sell the car and go to Florida. Because that's just my way of saying that I love you. And I had to call at the crack of dawn and list all the times that I've been wrong. Because that's just my way of saying that I'm sorry.
Language is a virus. Language is a virus. Language is a virus. Language is a virus. Ha!
Language is a virus.
It's amazing how evolution works sometimes. There's a certain male spider who has evolved from victim to survivor in just a few years. So, how it usually works is the female constructs a very complex web made of many different threads, and each thread serves a certain purpose. One thread is the weather line. She can tell if it's raining. And another one is very sticky. This is the food line. She can tell if she's caught something. And another sort of slicker is what's known as the mating line. She can tell if a male is approaching. So, how it usually works is the male comes walking along this line, they get together, mate, and then she eats him. That's how it usually works. But certain males seem to have developed a new strategy, which is that they bring along a package, which is a fly, all wrapped up in this cruddy stuff, and after they mate, he sort of tosses her the package. That's how it usually works. And the males then even came up with a new, even better strategy. And they brought along a package, all wrapped up, just like before, only now there was nothing actually inside. They had figured out that they didn't need to bring anything at all. And it's not like this is a disappointment for the females. It's just one of those moments where everything changes, and you don't know yet whether it's for better or for worse.
Now, recently,
I got a letter asking me to report my final experiences. And this is really daunting. I mean, should it be about science and art, the art of science, the science of art? And then I got another call, and it said,
Hey, we were just calling to tell you that you're not only the first artist in residence, you're also the last. Have a nice day, bye.
and so I changed my report pretty substantially. And this is part of it. Now, one of the first places I went to visit was the Hubble Space Scope headquarters, because the Hubble Space Scope is there. And one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen was on the front of a New York Times. It was these cumulus clouds spiraling up with these spikes of light jutting out. And in the back there was this pink and baby blue. And it read, "Stars being born in outer space." And I thought, it's so straightforward, you know, like classic Disney. And so I got to work with some of the scientists that were interpreting the information across the spectral frequencies. And I asked, now, are these the actual colors? I mean, is it really this pink and this blue? And they said,
Well, every picture is an interpretation in some ways, of course.
and I said, well, couldn't you have interpreted this pink as purple and this baby blue as gray? And they said,
Well, we thought people would like them.
and I said, you thought people would like them? And they call me the artist in residence here. I mean, you could really kind of fool people, you know, about what's going on out there. I mean, it looks so perfect, you know, like a Tiapolo painting, like a painting of heaven.
They say that heaven is like TV, a perfect little world that doesn't really need you. And everything there is made of light, and the days keep going by. Here they come, here they come, here they come. Well, it was one of those days, larger than life, when your friends came to dinner, and they stayed the night. And they cleaned out the refrigerator and ate everything in sight. And they stayed up in the living room and cried all night. Strange angels singing just for me, old stories, they are haunting me. This is nothing like I thought it would be. Well, I was out in my four-door, with the top down, and I looked up, and there they were, millions of tiny little teardrops, just sort of hanging there. And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And I said to myself, what next, big sky? Strange angels singing just for me. There's fair change falls on top of me. This is nothing like I thought it would be. Strange angels singing just for me. Old stories, they are haunting me. This is nothing like I thought it would be.
June 19th, Bangkok in New Guinea. There's something shiny. Northeast. It's my plane. Her skin so smooth, like an English biscuit tin. July 1st. Tonight I look westward over the Pacific. The whole width of the world cascading behind me, except this ocean. I'm ready to begin for the last leap. 2,500 miles of open ocean to go. Parachutes, gone. Visibility, none. Wind, blowing the wrong way.
Did you know that in New Guinea, the land is nothing but silt, held together by tangled vines? It's not anchored at all. And so, it can float off. And sometimes, little pieces break off, like rafts, and float out to sea. Now and then, animals get stuck on them. And you can see them, antelopes, rabbits, and deer, on these islands, floating away. On her last takeoff, Earhart was headed toward the Howland Islands, in the middle of the Pacific. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca, near the island, was assigned to guide her in. Takeoff was at dawn. Now, Earhart estimated chances of finding the island at about 50-50. As she flew towards the island, she was broadcasting, but on the wrong frequency. The closer she got, the fainter her voice became. For a sharper signal, she began a series of loud whistles. But the South Pacific was full of high-frequency radio codes, and her signals were lost.
Earhart to Itasca. We are flying at an altitude of 1,000 feet.
Itasca to Earhart. Do not hear you. Repeat.
Earhart to Itasca. Cannot see you.
Itasca to Earhart. Do not hear you. Broadcast on correct frequency 6210.
Earhart to Itasca. We are running a line north and south. Cannot see you.
Itasca to Earhart. Do not hear you. Repeat. Repeat.
Earhart to Itasca. We'll whistle into microphone.
Itasca to Earhart. Cannot hear you. Cannot hear you. Repeat.
Earhart to Itasca. Cannot see you. Cannot see you.
Itasca to Earhart. Cannot hear you. Repeat. Repeat.
Shiny. My plane. Shiny. Like a lucky dime. A shadow on the water. Shiny. Like a lucky dime. Heads I win. A shadow on the water.